Hello, welcome to Marie's Scrappy Creations, where we sew the scraps of your life into beautiful creations. It's almost Easter, so I've got one more Easter project for you. Now, I thought, who can't use a placemat or a centerpiece? So this is what I came up with. Now, I thought it was adorable. We've got the little chick coming out of the egg, little sprout of hair on the top, or feather. Doesn't have hair, what do I know? I will leave a link in the description box below for where you can cut out or find, print, and cut out the chick. Now I cut out two, and there's a reason for that, which you will see in the tutorial. So also in the description box will be the measurements that I used, as well as any products I used. I did use Heat and Bond Light, and I know there are other products out there like Steam-A-Seam and others. I just haven't personally used them, so the only one I know to recommend is the Heat and Bond Light, which is what I used. I used just a piece of fabric I had for the back. So if you would like to make this with me today, stick around. I'll show you how to make it for yourself. You can throw it in the centerpiece on your table. You could put it on an end table. It could be a placemat. It can be a gift. It can be anything you want it to be. We're going to use some scraps, make something cute for spring at the same time. It's a win-win. So you meet me over at the cutting table and we'll get started. I'll see you over there. Okay, now I'm using Heat and Bond Light. It comes in a roll. You can buy it in a small piece. I'm sure you can find it at Joann Fabric, although I've only been into a Joann Fabric once in my entire life. Either way, Walmart carries it. You can buy it online. You can get it anywhere. Heat and Bond Light. You do not want the heavy. It won't work for this. All right. So there are two sides to this. There's a gritty, shiny side. And then there's the paper side. Okay, you don't want to draw on the gritty side. You want to draw on the paper side. You're going to take your shapes, place them down with a little bit of space around them, and draw on them like this. And we're going to cut around these. So when you do, don't cut right out on the line. You don't want to cut right out on the line that you've drawn. You're going to cut around it. I'll show you what I mean. And you don't want your best sewing scissors for this. These are actually my oldest pair of Fiskars. I think they're like 25 years old. And this is what I use. So see, you want to have a little bit of area around your shape. And what you're going to do when we're done is we're going to iron this. We're going to iron it, the shiny side down on the back of our fabric that we choose. But anyway, for right now, you're going to get your fabric pieces. Now, I printed this out twice, the shape, because I didn't want to just go here. I cut down some because the fabric is going to, let me see if I can show you. We've got the egg. We have the chick peeking out. But you don't want your fabric just being right there. That would be hard to cover that edge. So I went down a little ways. I just kind of cut it like that. And I'm going to be covering that up. That fabric will be covered up when we get that placed. So now I need to trace this, and I need to trace the beak. I can do that on a little piece. I'm going to trace these pieces until they're like this, and then we'll go on to the next step. Okay, now I know I told you that we were going to do the gritty feeling shiny side on the wrong side of the fabric, but I want to use the wrong side as the right side because this is a little too dark for me for the egg part. Oops. So I'm going to use the lighter side of it. So I'm actually putting this on the right side, but you do the wrong side, if that makes sense. Okay, so medium heat, no steam. You just need a couple of seconds, and that's bonded. Okay, the wrong side of my yellow, which is really need to be ironed, but anyway. And this is for the chick. So we're going to place that down. Again, shiny side down on the back side. A couple of seconds to hold it. The final piece. I chose that for lack of something else that I could find in my scrap pile really quick. So this is going to be its beak. And I know it should probably be orange, but if this doesn't look good, I'll try something else. But for now, that's what it's going to be. So now we're going to cut on our pencil marks, because now we're going to be able to put our little chickie and the egg together. So I had a couple of ideas for this week's tutorial, and I wasn't sure which one I was going to use. But I know that a lot of people are looking for Easter ideas, and this isn't anything novel or anything, but I thought it would be a cute idea. And I had the scraps and of those colors. Oops, did I? No, that is the right piece. Get confused. I was thinking it had to have the little zigzags on it, but it doesn't. I hope these colors look good together. A friend of mine gave me this fabric. I'm not sure what she had used it for, but she gave it to me, and it's been the perfect color for quite a few different projects that I've worked on. And up near the head, we've got a little bit of embroidery to do with our sewing machines, and I don't want you to worry about that. You could possibly do it by hand if you'd like to. I apologize for the sound. There is a snowmobiler going around in circles as fast as he can behind our building. It's been driving me crazy most of the afternoon. There's hardly any snow out back, so I'm not sure. Maybe he's trying to get in the rest of the season. I don't know. Anyway, if you heard it, I apologize. All right, so I'm not sure how this is going to be looking yet. I guess we'll see, but it's got to have eyes on there, right, for it to look cute. Plus, it's got to be against the background. I hope I don't regret my choice of egg color, but you know what? I'm going to go with it. It's scraps. It's what we have. We're using what we have, right? So we're going to go with it, and I'm going to sew some eyes on there, so, and the little plume of feather there too. So all right, let me grab my other piece. All right, so I put together just some springy Easter colors. Most of these are cut about 2 1/4. Some are a little more, some a little less. I didn't worry about that. Actually, what I did is I took this, which kind of looks like Easter eggs, and I tried to use all the colors from it, or most of the colors from it. But I didn't want to use the yellow because we have yellow in the chick that's going to go onto this. I just hope it's not too busy, but I guess we will see. I also thought about putting it onto a block of fabric underneath there, but I think I'm just going to straight put it on there. I'm not sure which way is going to be up yet. I haven't decided that part. So this measures, let me see, approximately 13 by 20, but I'm going to cut it down. So I'm starting with this. Right now I have a piece of cotton batting underneath. I'm going to stitch it down. I'm not sure what I'm going to use. Stitch in the ditch, serpentine is usually what I end up using because I like it. But either way, I'm going to go quilt this down to the cotton. And then what is next is going to be starting to place our chick coming out of the egg onto this placemat. So once you have your placemat piece, and you could do this in small scraps, you could use one colored piece, you could use strips going up and down, squares, rectangles, whatever you'd like to use. So whatever you think you want to do, you use that. I'm going to use up all my scrappy strips. All right, I'm going to quilt that, and then we'll come back for the next part. Okay, so I've quilted this placemat, the strips, all down to the cotton, and I used yellow thread and the serpentine stitch. See, you guys already know me. I love that stitch. It works really well though. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to line up my ruler, one of the lines on my ruler with one of the lines right here. Trim the excess off. Now I want these to be roughly 18 inches. But because I'm going to be sewing and flip them, I'm just going to make a back that sews on and we're going to flip it around. I'm going to make it 19 inches. And how I'm going to trim these. Now, here's where our math comes into play. These had been cut at 2.5 inches, but they end up at 2 because we used 1/4 inch on each side. So now these side blocks aren't the same size. So in order to even everything up, I'm going to cut these. Okay, you see how these are basically 1 3/4 inches. Some of this is going to fold over. I'm going to cut this at 2 inches. It's going to be as close as you can get it to even. Trying to cut around my camera angle. I have a camera tripod in front of me while I'm cutting. Ah, lucky. See, it's what I do. Oh, look at that. That's right on 2 inches. How much? You couldn't plan that if you tried. Okay, so this now measures 12.5 by 19. So before we go any further, we've got to take care of our little chick. Okay, so one thing I wanted to show you is I made marks on my chick. Let's see if you can see. You see that mark on the side? So what I did is I placed this, because remember I cut down further below here. So I needed to know where that was. So I probably did this sideways actually when I did it before. Yeah. So I took this water erasable pen and I just made a little mark. I folded that up and made a little mark so that I would know how far up to bring my egg. So the first thing I want to do is find out where, I'm going to turn my iron on. I need to find out where I want to place this chick in reference to the rest of the placemat. Because once we take the back off the heat and bond and we press that, it's permanent. But until we do, we can move it around 500 times, maybe even 600. Okay. So peel your heat and bond. I guess we don't need that piece right now, but we do need these two pieces. We just need this one for reference, so we're not going to pull that off there. All right, I'm going to take my little marks that I made. I'm going to see where they go. So that's about how much of its head is sticking up. I think I might turn this and see, because the polka dots were showing through his head. So I'm going to try moving him. Her. We don't know which it is, do we? We probably ought to find the center though, hadn't we? Okay. I'm going to set this chick right straight up in the middle. About like that. Let's see, we've got 1 1/4. No, let's go down a little. Yeah, right about there. Okay, so once you're happy with where that chick is, remember we've already taken the heat and bond off there. So your iron is on medium heat, no steam. Just a couple of seconds, and that will be held down. Okay. I'm going to hold my shell back on so that I can place my beak. And then we're going to have to stop and do the little bit of eye work and things like that. Whoops, I guess I ought to put that right this way. We don't want that cute little chick to have its beak upside down, do we? Can't have that. Okay. Now, I traced this. After I cut this, or actually before I cut this piece out the other day, I just took a little scrap of paper and I traced the top of its head so that I could kind of draw that on there. And I'm no artist, but I'm just gonna wing it like that. Okay. And I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to take black thread. I'm going to go back and forth a couple of times, and I'm going to go up and down on each one. Do that. And then I've also got to do the same thing for its eyes. I'm going to do a very narrow zigzag stitch. The other alternative you have is you could take some black embroidery floss, which, well, maybe I could do that too, but you could use embroidery floss on either one. I'm going to use the sewing machine. And then I'll come back and I'll show you what we have. So this is my stitch. I've got the zigzag stitch, and this is the setting that I'm going to use for the little bit of hair on the top of the chick's head. So I have just a presser foot. Let me see if I can show you that. I think it's for embroidery. That's what I use it for because I can see. I have one that's wider, but this is just the first one I grabbed. All right, and I have black thread in. I hope you can see this the way I have this mounted. And where we start and stop is going to be covered up by the stitching around the chick. So I always pull my bobbin thread up, especially when doing something like this. And you don't have to stay right directly on your line. We don't know how the chick's hair was really standing up. Going to, whoops, I hit the camera, excuse me, from that. Might have been a little wide, but I'm still sticking with it. I'm no quitter. I'm sorry for the shake on that. I have a little handheld, well, I guess it clamps on, but it's clamped onto my sewing table. So the camera is going to move as soon as the vibration of the sewing machine gets going, and there's just nothing I can do about it because if I set the tripod up, I can't see past it to sew. All right, I'm going to come down just a bit. on my thread. Okay, so that's what we've got. That doesn't look too bad, I don't think. What do you think? Kind of cute. Okay, I'm basically going to do the same thing for the eyes, but I'm just going to go back and forth just a couple of times in place. And I use tweezers all the time. Number one, I don't have fingernails because I have very dry skin, which means my fingernails are really dry too. And I can't grab that. I just can't. Ah, my iron quit. Okay, and I'm going to put that onto a very tiny straight stitch and go back over that just to secure those threads. Let's see what that looks like. What do you think? I think that's okay. All right, one more time. So I need to go back to my zigzag stitch. Oh, I can't remember what I was on. Oh, yes, I do. Okay. So do you have something in your sewing room that belongs in another room, like my tweezers? I don't know how I got by without them. I grabbed them one day because I could not get a hold of the thread with my fingers. I just couldn't do it. So I thought, I'll try that. All right, I think it's looking pretty good. So now I'm going to put a beige or an orange, dark brown, something like that in here. And I'm going to just zigzag stitch around the beak. And I'm going to, from my little marks, let me grab something to point with here. Remember how I made those little blue marks? I'm going to start with the zigzag there, okay? But just below there, I'm going to straight stitch right here. When I get to here, I'll zigzag, and I'm going to zigzag around the edge. I'm going to go right up over that hair. I'm going to come back the other side, and then after I get past this little blue mark, I'll straight stitch just a little bit, just to hold that on there a little bit, because the eggshell is going to come on and hold the rest. You don't need to go very far. Okay, so when I get that done, I'll meet you back over at the cutting table, and I'll show you what I have. All right, so I stitched around with a really close together zigzag stitch around both the beak and around the majority of the body. I did a straight stitch from here to there. Peel off the back of your other heat and bond piece, your eggshell. Place it where you'd like it to be. Take your preheated iron, medium heat, a little bit. You could have it on cotton, it will work. For a couple of seconds I thought that was the wrong way, and then I remembered I was using the wrong side of the fabric for the eggshell. What do you think so far? Okay, so I'm going to go do the same thing. I'm going to zigzag stitch around there and come back, and then all we have to do is the backing. And we're going to do a really easy one this time, but I will include a link in the description box to another way to do the backing where you have mitered corners, as I did in another video. But the reason that I'm not going to do that today is that the fabric that I want for the back is just barely big enough to fit the back. And we're using scraps. That's what this channel's all about, using it up. I'm not going to cut a big piece of fabric just to do a certain binding. And I think I will be happy with just flipping it right side out, but we'll get to that soon. I think it turned out pretty cute. What do you think? Okay, and now Remember I said I had a piece of fabric that just about fit this. I want to show you how close this is. A friend of mine gave me this piece of fabric 3 or 4 years ago probably. But anyway, I'll just lay it this way for the moment. But you can see that I'll have a little bit left over, but not much. So what I'm going to do, with my ironing board, I'm going to lay this out flat, place right sides together. I'm going to grab my pins and I'm going to pin around the edges. I'm going to leave an opening so that I can turn it right side out. And just make sure you smooth it down. I'm going to use actually they're little chick pins. Look at that. I've got little chick pins to use for my chick. I'm just going to leave an opening enough to flip it out. I guess I've got about a little over 4 inches there, but anything around there will do. I'll trim off the excess later. I'm just going to use the edge of my placemat as my sewing guide. You can use the edge of your sewing foot. You can use 1/4 inch. You do whatever you think you want to do. Whatever makes you happy makes me happy. And we'll just be happy sewing together. Okay, so I am going to back tack. I'm going to sew all the way around, back tack here, and I'll meet you back here. All right. I sewed around the edge of the placemat itself. Just left that extra fabric on there. And now I'm going to trim it off. You could use scissors. I'm just going to trim off the majority of it. Except for when I get close to my opening, I always leave a little bit more fabric there. I just used the edge of my presser foot as a guide. I didn't use a 1/4 inch. I don't even know what it is. I think it's closer to 3/8 of an inch, but it won't hurt a thing. Once you flip it inside out or right side out, nobody's going to know. Okay, the only thing left to do is to clip our corners. Just go fairly close, but not into your seam. I always try to pick up any extra threads because I don't want them to show through the other side. We'll push this out. I should have put my gloves on because my skin catches on this cotton. I cut myself the other day. It was so stupid. I cut my thumb, and it wasn't with a rotary cutter. I told a couple of people I cut myself, and everyone guessed rotary cutter, but not this time. It was not a rotary cutter, although I have done that before, and I think it took weeks to heal that thing. It was terrible. I've tried to be really careful with rotary cutters ever since. But oh no, I cut it. I was making Hasselback potatoes the other day, and I was just cutting along. I had the potato like this, and I'm slicing, and I sliced right down through, and the only thing that stopped it was my thumbnail. Now, while I'm waiting for my iron to heat up, I'm going to use Sally. This is who I call Sally. It's just a dowel that my husband sharpened like a pencil, and he put a round, like, piece of wood that it came that way. We got it from a craft box, some secondhand store or something. But he had to flatten it off because I'd set it on the table and it would go rolling. So I call her Sally. That's what she looks like to me. Anyway, this is what I used to carefully poke my corners out. when I'm making something. Sally's quite helpful that way. And you're going to hear my iron ding in a minute because of course I let it shut off. It's off when I need it and on when I don't. And thank goodness that it has that beep because I forget about it. I'm terrible. Well, this is looking cute. I really wish I would have had a piece of fabric that matched that I could have brought over from the back. But I didn't. And I still think this is adorable. I still really like it. And I don't have something spring for my centerpiece, or, you know, this is a placemat, but you could certainly use it as a centerpiece or throw it on a coffee table or a stand, whatever you'd like to do. So now I'm going to press my edges. I'm going to use a little bit of steam because I want this to be nice and even, because then I'm going to stitch around to hold everything together, because I don't think we could just leave this as is. I don't think that it would hold together well, because I had thought about quilting around the outside just with an outline stitch, which I guess I could still do to hold the center down, but I think as long as the edges are held down, it's going to be okay. But if you want to try quilting around the little chick and the egg, you could do that. I would suggest 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch from the edge. And I think I am going to use a whip stitch, ladder stitch, I never remember which it's called. I'm going to close this up by hand. I think it hides it better than the sewing machine does, for one. And number two, I don't want to sew that close to the edge. I would like to come out a little ways, probably 1/2 inch from the edge to sew. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it over and I'm going to hand stitch this closed, and I'm going to stitch 1/2 inch from the edge all the way around. And I'll see you back here for the finished product. I thought maybe I'd show you this, and I do think it's called the ladder stitch. You just take a little bit from one side and pull. Oh, move my light. And a little bit from the other side. And you just keep doing that. You go back and forth, and it basically hides because you can barely see where I've sewn. Like, if you pull it too tight, it will show. So there's kind of a happy medium that you have to learn when you do this. You just, a little bit from the top. Just go right below where that stitch was and go over. And you just keep repeating. I'm doing them a little larger now that I'm not sitting down because I'm standing. But I think it will hold. I usually do a little teeny tiny stitch. Let's see if I can get back into it. And you could totally use your sewing machine to stitch this. I tend to try to hide little things like this, so I do it this way. But I was sitting there starting sewing this, and I thought, oh, I probably should go back to the camera and show them how to do this, just in case, you know, someone hasn't seen it done. And that's all I'm doing. I'm just continuing to do that. I got way too much thread here. I don't know what size hole I thought I was sewing up, but I keep hitting that light, but it's pretty much invisible. It's very hard to see where that opening is. And then as soon as I knot this off, I'm going to do my quilting around the outside. And I think because of the layers, I'm going to put my walking foot on my sewing machine. And I'm probably going to use a stitch length of about 3.0 on my machine. And you could use a decorative stitch if you wanted to. That's totally up to you. I had to pause there. The cat came running in the room. And she would be right up here to see what's happening. And besides, I try to close her out as much as I can because she gets into everything, like just everything. Okay, I am at the end. Look at that. Trying really carefully not to hit my thumb. It's so sore. But I can't leave a bandage on because I can't feel it. But it's healed up enough today. I took a friend's advice and took a day off from sewing and just let it rest. I mean, I looked at fabric and, you know, watched some videos and looked online for things, but I didn't do any sewing and I left it kind of half covered, so it healed up pretty well. Okay, now I'm going to pull that through and bury that end. Okay, now I think this little chick is looking cute. I'm going to take it over and I'm going to top stitch 1/2 of an inch away from the edge all the way around. And we're going to be done. Okay, so our creative word of the day is going to be egg, because we have an eggshell and because I think these look kind of like those candy Easter eggs that you get. Anyway, so we're going to go with word of the day being egg. You use it in the comments below and your name goes into the drawing, which is coming up on Wednesday. So if your comment wins, then I will send you something that I've made for you. Okay, comment below. Okay, and look how nice this looks. Isn't that so bright and cheerful? I really like this. And I could have chosen any of the appliques that I saw online, but that's the one I thought was cutest. So I want to thank you for joining me today, and I hope you liked our scrappy little placemat that we made. Oh yeah, I opened my finger up again, so yeah, I'm back to the bandage. Bummer. Maybe by next week I'll be healed up. See, I was going to go get a manicure and pedicure on Friday, but I couldn't go because I was afraid of getting an infection or something. I couldn't have gotten a fake nail on there. Anyway, okay, I want to thank you for joining me for this. And if you make one, or if you want to see if anybody else made one, make sure you join our Facebook group, Marie's Scrappy Creations. You can share pictures of things that you've made, not necessarily things that I've shown you. You could show us anything at all. But I do like to see when you've made something that we've done on air. So if you'd like to show us, just join, or if you've already joined, just post your pictures. And if any of you make this, I would love to see it. Thank you so much, and until next time, stay safe, be kind, keep sewing, and I'll see you on Wednesday. Take care.